On this first day of the month, when rent is due for so many Americans, we're going to highlight the country's looming eviction crisis. A federal moratorium on evictions runs out at the end of this month. After that, people who owe back rent could be forced out of their homes at the beginning of the year. An estimated 10 million renters were behind, owning a combined $57 billion with a B dollars in rent and utilities. Our national correspondent, that's Jericka Duncan, shows us the toll on renters and the building's owners.
Adilsa Fernandez describes life these days as hanging on by a thread.
How have these last 11 months been for you?
Tough. I would say traumatic.
How much do you owe in rent right now?
Close to $20,000.
Close to $20,000.
Yeah.
For about 4 years, Fernandez has been living with a roommate in a second-story apartment within a house in Queens, New York.
Before the pandemic, were you behind on your rent?
No, never. I've never had an eviction issue, never had a rent issue.
Fernandez says it was a tough decision at the beginning of the pandemic to not start a new job as a home health aide, but a necessary one because of asthma and other medical conditions.
It's either I risk myself to die and pay the rent and still die, or I stay home safe.
The risk is real for Fernandez, whose mother was hospitalized after contracting the virus.
She literally was in critical condition. The doctors told me and the nurses told me that she wasn't going to make it on December 25th. And we were preparing for her to just pass away. Thankfully, she pulled through, but it also was eye-opening for me. Like, I made the right decision for myself.
Currently, Fernandez is working a part-time job from home, bringing in some $1,200 a month. And Fernandez's roommate lost her job at the beginning of the pandemic, making their $1,800 monthly rent payments impossible.
What happens if you're evicted? It's dead of winter right now.
I don't know. I really don't know.
As state and federal moratoriums are expected to expire in the next few months, an estimated 30 to 40 million Americans are at risk of being evicted. Black and Latino people make up approximately 80% of those facing eviction. But it's not just renters. Landlords say they're feeling the pressure too.
How many of your tenants are behind right now?
They're all behind in one way or another.
Liz Dunn owns 6 buildings in Seattle, Washington. It's made up of more than 20 small businesses and nearly 30 apartments.
My entire goal is to try and keep every one of my tenants in their space until we are all the way through this.
Dunn admits that's been difficult. She's accepting less in rent from tenants and has been directing them to grants and loans.
How are you able to afford your tenants that grace to say, you know what, just chalk it up to the pandemic, and when you can start paying me in full, we'll move forward?
Well, that's where the local banks come in. So they're affording me the same grace. For example, I'm getting help with not having to pay the principal on the loan, just making the interest payments.
For renters who don't have a landlord like Dunn, there may be some relief coming soon. The federal government's emergency rental assistance program went into effect in January. $25 billion is being made available to states to help assist qualified households with rent and utilities. But experts say it may not be enough.
I've never been in a situation like this.
For Fernandez, who recently applied for food stamps, the future is uncertain.
They literally said you make $3 more. So I wasn't poor enough to get assistance, but I didn't have enough to be able to survive.
What are you most concerned about when you think about your situation and the more than 40 million Americans in this country who are on the verge of being kicked out of their apartments?
I'm thinking this is gonna further create a homeless crisis. I want people to know that this can happen to anybody.
Fernandez and her roommate were taken to court, housing court, by the landlord. We did reach out to the landlord for comment, but did not hear back.
Jericka, this has got to feel overwhelming. What can be done to help those like Ms. Fernandez who are facing eviction?
You know, we spoke to a housing expert, and they said that this is a big issue, mainly because of that back rent. And that $25 billion that the government has set aside is used to help those renters and landlords with that back rent. But you have to apply. And on top of that, it's really up to the states and local governments as to how that money is distributed. Experts say the bottom line here, the issue is best addressed through policy changes and making more affordable housing available. Gayle?
All right, Jericka, thank you very much.